Hello, Tanse, Anin. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to APTN InFocus. I'm Daryl Stranger. Today, we're going to be looking at Indigenous youth making a difference in their community and breaking barriers for the next generation. We'll speak with youth running programs for kids in Alberta, a swimmer breaking barriers in the queer community, and a young woman in BC working to protect her language and her culture. We're putting Indigenous youth in focus. And of course, we want you to join in on our conversation. You can tweet us at APTN InFocus or email infocus@aptn.ca. So let's get right into it. Our first guest you may be familiar with. Our own Sav Jonesa is a non-binary two-spirit intern here with us at APTN News. Sav has had some experience hosting a newscast and reporting on some great stories. They join us now to talk about the work they've done with us so far. Sav, it's always great to chat with you around the newsroom, and now we have you on InFocus, so it's great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm very excited.
So first off, we'll start simple. I mean, how did you decide to get into journalism? What sort of drew you towards journalism?
Yeah, I've been writing stories since I was like 7 years old. I remember I would write on Microsoft Word, and I'd put in clip art photos just to make it more dynamic and give it visuals. And up into even my teens, I was writing articles about serious subjects like corrective rape in the queer community and stuff like that. And so it's just always been something, using my voice, telling stories, and trying to make a difference. That's been interesting to me.
So for you, why is it important for you to consider something like this a career?
I don't think that there's, nearly enough queer voices, in the media, and obviously Indigenous voices either. And so for queer, two-spirit, non-binary, trans, Indigenous, Métis voices, I think that there's definitely a market for that, and there's definitely people who want to hear, from me and from others, and I think our perspectives are really important.
No, absolutely. That's really well said. And you've worked here for about 6 months now, something like that, right? So maybe what are some of the challenges you've sort of seen as you've been working here? What's that been like?
Yeah. One of, I think, the most difficult challenges when I first started here was actually just trusting myself. I've experienced a lot of discrimination growing up and being trans, and starting working here and being around other people who support me in my gender and are using the right pronouns, and they believe in me. It was almost hard for me to catch on to that and to accept that, and not be worried that I'm going to disappoint people. I think that was one of the hardest challenges, was just trusting myself and knowing that I got it, and that the people want me here because I'm doing a good job.
Well, you are doing a great job, and you haven't disappointed anybody here. And so while we're touching on that, what are some of the high points since you've been here?
Probably the high points for me was hosting the news on Christmas Eve. Never thought that would be something that was going to happen to me this year or even in my life. So that was one of the biggest goals, I think, that I had, was to be on TV, and here I am hosting national news and having these beautiful stories. And I think just learning to actually trust myself, going forward, I've gotten a lot better at that, and I think that's a high point too.
Yeah, you've certainly gotten, in the 6 months I've seen you grow just so much. It's so awesome to see. And as you touched on, you did host the national news, and we think you're the first non-binary anchor, at least in Canada, to host a national show. So when I say that, what are your thoughts on that?
If you would have asked me 7 months ago, if I thought that I would be hosting a national news show, I'd say that's ridiculous. Never. And I think that comes to obviously my own self-confidence and stuff, but I think also just what representation is there. I think especially in newsrooms and hosting television. That's just not something that I could have envisioned as a possibility. And so I think that right there is kind of the issue. What it means to me, it means a lot, because I couldn't have thought that was possible.
Well, you did a great job, and we do actually have a clip of Sav hosting that news show, so here's a little bit of that.
Good evening, I'm Sav Chionza, and welcome to our special holiday edition of APTN National News Weekend. We start with an incredible story from northern BC. A 140-year-old Chilkat blanket is returning back to the Tlingit community where it once came from. While the local First Nation is rejoicing over the amazing find, it's also questioning why it has to foot the bill for a cultural item that rightfully belongs to its people. Here's Sarah Connors with that story.
So again, just a really well done. I had the pleasure of, sort of walking you through some of what to do, and I mean, my expectations, I didn't know what to expect with you, but you were just fantastic. So you hosted that and really brought yourself to the forefront to our audience. And so, why does the LGBTQ2S representation matter, and especially in a newsroom?
I think. Growing up, I didn't even know what to expect for me being like an adult. Like, I'm about to turn 28, and I didn't think I would live past being 27. Like I never had queer adults to look up to. Especially like in the media. So I think now knowing that, like, I'm one of those people that like I needed.
Well, I was just going to
Thanks a lot.
So yeah, you're in a position now where you're sort of a leader yourself, and you're sort of blazing that trail for others. And somebody who maybe was like you when you were younger they have that sort of role model to look up to. I mean, that has to mean something to you, right? Like,
yeah, I want to be a good role model, and that's something that I don't take for granted at all. Like, I'm always catching myself and making sure that I believe in what I'm saying, and that I'm considerate of others, and I think that's what's important. I think within the news in general, and with representation of Indigenous people and of queer people, and it's to make sure that you're doing a good job in telling their stories.
Mm-hmm. Well, so say there's a youth out there who's like you, or I don't mean like you in that way, but just they want to get into media, and what advice would you have for them to maybe get started and having, sort of walk the path yourself?
Yeah, I would say find people who support you, because, working here, I felt that support from the very first day. And, the people in my life, they support me so much. And I've been surrounded by people who didn't, in workspaces or, in personal life. And they don't do anything to help you improve, And so I think whatever your dream is, if it's journalism or if it's being on TV or just being a really good person or, whatever, just make sure that you're surrounded by support and people who love you, and, they'll hold you up and they'll keep you accountable. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, and, specifically with journalism, find stories in your own life that you want to tell, or stories of your family or stuff that your grandma told you, and start with those stories and see how it feels. And, those personal stories, I think they're a good way to kind of measure, is journalism something I want to do? Yeah, because these stories were important to me, and I'm sure that there's many others.
Right. And just before we let you go, how do you think youth is going to set the agenda going forward for media?
I think youth are holding media way more accountable, through social media and TikTok and whatnot. I find that youth are having higher expectations of the media realm, and so I think we're going to see a lot more diversity and proper diversity, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot more voices heard, and we're not going to see so many stereotypes on television. And I think that goes in for a lot of different marginalized people. That's been such an issue, I think, ever since television first started. And I think that's something that really our youth are trying to change, is those stereotypes and making sure that people are represented properly and people are seen. Right,
absolutely. Well, Sav, I think we'll leave our conversation there for now. Obviously, we're not going to end the conversation like this, but we'll leave it there for now. I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing a bit of your story and a bit of what you do, and keep up the good work. I mean, you're doing so well here, so certainly look forward to seeing what you do moving forward.
Thanks. Thank you, Daryl.
So our next guest is Kinney Johnson, a high school student in Manitoba who also is a swimmer, and last year became the first transgender male to compete in an event in Manitoba, although that's not the only thing he wants to be defined as doing. Kene joins me now. Kene, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day. I understand you're quite busy with school and everything that you got going on. You're making waves in the swim community. Apologies for the pun, being the first transgender male to compete in Manitoba. When I say that, what goes through your mind, Kene?
Honestly, I mean, I don't personally think it's that big of a deal myself. I mean, I just wanted to swim where I belonged, you know? And I didn't realize that I had made such a big impact until the next year after I had done that.
Well, and so what was it like for you to compete then?
It was scary. I was quite nervous before doing it. But afterwards, I was very proud that I had done it. I was excited, like once I was up on the block getting ready to dive, I was excited. And, you know, like the next year when I got to see other transgender people competing on the side that aligns with their own gender, I started crying because I couldn't believe that, you know, I had made such a difference.
Well, what was that like for you to see the impact that you made on other people? I mean, to have other people look up to you and be inspired that, you know, they're living their true self. I mean, what was that like for you? Like you said, you were like crying almost. Like, what was it like to see other people competing the next year?
Well, I had a friend on a different team who is also transgender, and when I saw him getting up on the block, tears came to my eyes, and I was so happy and so proud that people could, like, that swimmers finally could switch sides, you know? Like, I talked to him after the race, and he told me thank you. He said that, like, he'd wanted to do this for so long, and that was the thing. So many people had wanted to do this, but no one knew how to switch, so.
Well, so, like, I imagine there's been some ups and downs throughout your journey. I mean, how does it feel to break the barrier and to see other people just, like we mentioned, just living their true self?
You know, it feels great. You know, I've had some negative responses to that sort of stuff, but I mean, like, the positives outweigh the negatives. I just hope that I can be one of these people that another, like a younger queer person can look at and be like, oh, so I can be myself. It's okay to be myself. I have a place where I belong.
So who did you rely on through some of the negativity? I know your mom is a big part of your life, right? Who did you rely on to help get you through that?
I relied on my mom. You know, she's my biggest supporter. I relied on my friends because even though people were saying hateful stuff, my friends were contrasting it with saying stupid, funny stuff. So, you know, like, I think that having a good support system is the best thing a person can have.
Absolutely. And what does it mean to you to bring LGBTQS2S+, voices to the forefront? I mean, it seems so natural to you to just be yourself. And I mean, I imagine it could be hard for some others, but seeing you and how you do it, I mean, what's it mean to bring those voices to the front?
I mean, I wasn't always open and being myself. I spent quite a lot of time trying to fit in, but eventually I just kind of decided that, you know, why would I want to fit in? No one truly fits in. You know, like, I have found so much joy, so much more happiness just being my true self and surrounding myself with people who care about that. And I mean, being able to be someone who brings queer voices to the forefront has been an honor. It has been so great. I mean, like, I hope that I have an impact on a future generation of people who can just can be who they are from the beginning and not feel like they have to fit in.
Well, so along with your swimming, I understand you're also taking some university level classes in high school. First of all, how's that going, and what does it take to sort of add that to your plate and be successful at it as well?
So yeah, I take courses at MITT, which is the Manitoba Manitoba Institution of Trade and Technology. It is a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. You know, I get along with my classmates. Yeah. And honestly, it takes a lot of hard work. I spend most of my nights doing homework. I spend a couple hours every night doing homework, along with my swimming, and then you know, it's work, it's dedication, but again, like, it's support system. I would never have been able to make it as far as I have in my university courses if it wasn't for my family.
Well, so what's sort of behind the decision to take some of those courses now?
When I was in middle school, I was extremely interested in coding, and when I was in like grade 8, a new school, the Pembina Trail School Division had this new school running called PTech, which was Pembina Trails Early College. It's focused on cybersecurity, like computer stuff, basically. And so I applied, and I actually got in. They do a random selection of 30 students. So I went there for grade 9 and grade 10, but once I got to grade 11, I was given the choice of cybersecurity or software development, and I went into cybersecurity.
So just how do you sort of balance that then with swimming? I mean, like, do you still swim competitively, or how's swimming still in your life?
I don't swim competitively anymore. It just takes up quite a lot of time, and I find that, you know, like, I enjoy being in the swimming community just as being on my team. I still swim with my team. I just don't compete in competitions. I volunteer though. But I mean, luckily I have quite a few practices before school, so that leaves my after school free to do homework. And I just try and use my time wisely. Luckily, I have a spare in my day, which I usually spend doing homework.
Right. So then what's next for you in swimming and in your life? Like, are you looking maybe to eventually get back into competitive swimming, or is it just sort of more on the side as you focus on school? Like, what's next for you in swimming and then therefore in your life as well?
I mean, I still absolutely love swimming, but I don't have full intentions of continuing to compete. You know, I did love competing, but I have so much going on right now. I have so much education-wise, and I would rather focus on getting my degree right now.
Right. And do you have any advice for any young youth who's out there watching this interview, just if they're looking at swimming or school, or even if they're looking at how they can be their true self? Do you have any advice?
Don't care about what people think. I have spent too much of my life caring about what people think. Once I just decided that the only person that I wanted to impress was myself, my life became so much better. I became so much happier because I started to do what I wanted to do. I started to go into the classes that I wanted to go in. I started fighting for my right to compete on the side that aligns with myself. You know, I was so afraid that I was going to get negative reactions from people, and then I just eventually went, you know what, this is just a swim meet. Who cares? Like, we're just swimming. It's not that big of a deal. You know, and when it came to like coming out, I mean, just, it's a lot easier to be yourself than to be who you pretend to be.
Sinead, that's a really great way of saying that, and I think that's a great way of maybe leaving our discussion for now. But I want to say thank you, miigwech, to you for coming on and sharing a bit of your story and a bit of what you do. So, Sinead, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, we have to step aside for a short break, but still ahead, we'll speak with a woman in BC working to ensure her language stays alive.
Join our conversation now. Like us on Facebook on our APTN News page, follow or tweet us at APTN InFocus, and send your thoughts to infocus@aptn.ca.
Welcome back to APTN in Focus. In December of 2019, a 10-year-old girl in Kamsack, Saskatchewan went to school wearing her ribbon skirt. She was saddened and hurt by comments an educational assistant made about her traditional attire. However, people in town and on social media came together to give her their support. Priscilla Wolf has the story.
This is the first day back at school for Isabella Kulak after she was told by an educational assistant that her ribbon skirt wasn't considered formal wear for a school event on December 18th. Quentin Robertson, the director and CEO of Good Spirit School Division, says the incident is not being taken lightly.
Comments were made that brought to bear or brought to light some significant systemic racism.
This group of supporters, including some staff, walked Isabella to school on her first day back after the incident. People across North America were supporting her online. A Facebook group was created by supporters, and thousands of members have been posting pictures of themselves in ribbon skirts in solidarity. Cultural advisor and family spokesperson Judy Pelly says the incident struck a chord.
It went to the heart of all the Indigenous women across the country and even globally, but especially across Canada and the United States, that people are just flooding our with pictures of their ribbon skirts.
Pelly sees this as a turning point.
I think that there's been a big movement in the last decade, and especially maybe the last 5 years, in ribbon skirts symbolizing strength and resilience and power of our women.
Many people want to acknowledge a National Ribbon Skirt Day as a lesson and cultural awareness about the role of women and ribbon skirts. Robertson says they are on board.
So we'll honor whatever the family, the First Nation, wants to put forward.
Good Spirit School Board says the comments by the educational assistant are an HR issue, and that is not being taken lightly.
And just a reminder that January 4th is now officially National Ribbon Skirt Day because of what happened. And our next guest now joining me this afternoon is Megan Metz. Megan is a member of the Haisla First Nation in BC and is dedicated to ensuring her Haisla language survives. She is also an advocate for mental health and wellness, and she joins me now. Megan, thank you so much for taking some time and joining us today. Now, you're an advocate for the Haisla language and the culture, among many, many other things, but we'll start there. What are some things you're doing in your community to preserve the language and the culture?
In my community here, I've been involved in a process called the Rapid Word Collection, which was done with the help of some linguists from Trinity University, as well as First Nations Education Foundation. It was a real honor to get to do that work. We got to work with fluent speakers, elders, and knowledge keepers in our community. It's kind of been an ongoing process since 2020. We've collected words, stories, and this year we worked on collecting traditional place names for our territory. And it's definitely been quite the learning process for me, but I feel like I get a lot out of it. The connections that you make and just the knowledge that is shared. It's been a pretty incredible journey so far.
So Megan, what inspired you to do all of this work?
I think it kind of started on my own healing journey. I realized how impactful it was for me to learn more about my identity as a Haisla person. And a lot of that came through culture, it came through language, it came through connecting with, like I mentioned, the knowledge keepers in our community. And it had such a positive impact on me. I wanted to be able to explore that a little more, get a more in-depth understanding of it, and then turn around and share what I've learned with other people, because I know I've felt those positive impacts, and I wanted to be able to share those kinds of opportunities and experiences with others too.
Well, when it comes to the language, I mean, how many people speak the language? Like, is the language in danger?
You definitely could say that. I think the last time I checked, we had about 80 fluent speakers left in our community, which is still a pretty good number, but we're definitely doing the work that we can to ensure we can collect as much as we can from those speakers that are still with us here.
Well, so when it comes to your culture, is it something that you've always sort of been around since you were a kid and a child and growing up, or was it something you more so learned as you were growing up? And like you said, you're kind of on your own journey, right?
Yeah, definitely. When I was younger, I really felt that call and that pull to it. I was involved in a local dance group in our community, and I really took a liking to, I guess, or I was very interested in the leader of the group, how they led the group and the drummers and the singers with the talking stick. And one day I kind of tried to pick it up myself while we were in practice, and I was just mimicking what I had observed, and I was definitely really nurtured and guided from the beginning. They made me my own like mini talking stick, and I had a little regalia set up. Unfortunately, though, because we were kind of walking into worlds, I did lose a little bit of that connection entering into high school, trying to find my place, trying to fit in. But it's something I've found my way right back to. I feel like I've come full circle, and I'm realizing now why I felt so called to that ceremony, the singing and the drums, all of that. And the language is definitely a part of that. So kind of picking up where I left off.
Well, and like I had mentioned off the top, I mean, you do so many other, so much more great work as well. You're also advocating for mental health. How do you address the need for mental health supports in your community?
I first started off with trying to connect with other youth in my community. As I was learning more about mental health, I was on a committee with First Nations Health Authority, Life Promotion for All My Relations. I think from about 2018 to 2020 or 2021, was doing work with them, and I got mental health and wellness skills training. I got a lot of exposure to different like ceremony, getting to connect with people from other nations. And I took what I learned from that. I tried to implement the language that I was learning, like positive affirmations in our language or helpful phrases that can help you reach out to others if you're in need of help. And I kind of put that into a presentation, and I would take that to our annual Heisley Youth Culture Camps. And I would try my best to just open up a safe space for those kinds of discussions amongst my fellow youth. And I have had the opportunity as well to try and support people in other age groups in our community. And yeah, a lot of it usually connects right back to like sharing our stories, sharing our history, because that's what really helps empower our people and remind them about who we are.
Well, Megan, how does that, with the mental health aspect, how does that also tie into culture and language? I imagine there's some sort of connection there too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I feel like they go hand in hand. When you're out spending time on the land, when you're spending time with elders, when you're learning more about your mother tongue, that kind of first language that a lot of us have, it strengthens the identity that you have, and it strengthens the connection that you have to the land, because so much of our language is connected directly to the land through place names. And in my community's case, the traditional names that individuals hold too are connected to pieces of our land. And being able to have all that knowledge and know you have this sense of place and this sense of belonging through our storytelling, like I feel like it just all weaves together quite effortlessly. And I think that's why the mental health work that I initially started with kind of started to intertwine together with the culture and language work that I was doing too. I feel like they go hand in hand.
No, absolutely. And you had mentioned you're sort of leading the charge, so to speak, and you're taking all of this to different age groups as well. Why is it important for you as a youth or as a younger member of the community to combat mental health and to sort of lead the charge on a lot of these different initiatives?
I feel like we all deserve that opportunity to heal, to connect, and having that intergenerational healing is really important to me, because everyone talks about how our youth are our future. That is absolutely true. They deserve all the love and the care and the teachings in the world. But we can't forget about our other age groups in our communities too, because they've also been impacted by the historical, and not only the historical, but the ongoing impacts of colonization that has had on our people, on our lands, and our communities. We're all feeling the impacts in varying ways, and I just feel very strongly that everyone deserves that opportunity to have those kinds of experiences, because that's what opens you back up to wanting to be vulnerable, to wanting to learn, and wanting to address those kind of really deep things that a lot of us have been carrying. And some of us, it's not all our own stuff that we've been carrying. So being able to explore that and learn more about ourselves and who we really are, not what the world kind of tells us that we are.
Right. And what are some of the other age groups saying to you and saying about all of this work that you're doing?
It's really encouraging, actually, to see the way all these different generations are connecting with each other. I used to host these events when I was working for my nation, and I called them Nuyum Nights. And Nuyum in our language means story. But it kind of translates to so much more than that, because through our stories, we learn our history, we learn our natural laws, our protocols, we learn more about our language. And it was hosted online because it was during the pandemic, so we couldn't really meet in person. We had people from all over Canada. We had entire families sitting in to listen to these stories. We had elders coming in and adding like all these beautiful details to each story. And I felt like it just created this safe space where all of these questions that we've all had, we could finally ask them and realize, even though you may feel like you weren't raised particularly with strong culture, you might not actually be aware that you have a lot of teachings in your kyoji, in your bentwood box, or in your basket. And it's simply because that's just how you were raised. You were instilled with those really old values, and it was affirming for a lot of people too, to realize how much they actually carried. And you could just see the way adults, youth, elders would just be uplifted by the discussions that we had. And like I said, it's just incredibly encouraging for me, and it's something I hope to continue to get to do.
Megan, what do you think it takes to have someone be a leader either in their community or just a leader to maybe their family? What do you think it takes to be a leader?
To be a leader, I feel like it's not so much about... Oh, froze there for a second. Okay, so for me, I think being a leader doesn't necessarily have to coincide with a certain position or a certain level of power that you have in your community. It's really about how you conduct yourself. And if you feel really passionate or really called to a certain area or a certain kind of area of knowledge, I guess I'm trying to say, if you feel really called to it, do what you can to explore it and look into it and really embrace that part of yourself, because that could be your gift. That could be the gift you have to offer your community, your family, and who knows how far that could really spread. There's a ripple effect on everything.
I wanted to ask, like, what are some of your future goals? And you've already done some incredible work in the past. Like, what are you working towards in the future here?
Well, I recently graduated from the University of Northern British Columbia with a certificate in First Nations language, so in Khaizakala, my language. And I'm hoping to have more opportunities to be able to teach more about our language, continue learning from the elders and fluent speakers in my community, and trying to keep those safe spaces open in our community for people to come together to learn, to discuss these things that maybe people weren't as comfortable discussing before. And just like strengthening not only myself, but the people around me too, and really try to build and uplift and just continue to have that hope and that positivity for the future.
Well, and just on that note, where do you hope to see everything go, just in terms of your work, but also the work across the country when it comes to reconciliation and people connecting with their own culture? Where do you sort of, as an overall goal, hope to see things go?
I just hope to see our languages, our identities, our sovereignty as peoples to be not only acknowledged, but to be respected, to be uplifted, and to be truly honored, because we all have such beautiful cultures, beautiful languages, and I would love to see all of that more accurately represented in this country that we live in, and to have more opportunities for not only our youth, but all of our people to really not stay in that kind of, how am I trying to say this? Not really surviving, but like truly thriving and feeling joy in life, and being able to explore, like I'd mentioned, the different gifts that each of us carry.
Well, Megan, that's really well said. I think that's a great way to leave our conversation for now. I want to say a big thank you, Miigwech, to you for coming on and joining our show and sharing a bit of what you do and what you're passionate about. So again, thank you, Miigwech.
Yeah, thank you. Analchach Nagutla. I thank you for this opportunity.
All right, it's time to step aside one final time here, but we're not quite done yet. After the break, we'll learn how Indigenous youth in Alberta are helping kids in their own communities feel better about themselves. Welcome back to APTN in Focus. Now, before we speak with our next guest, here's a look back at a great story about the impact sport, and in this case running in particular, can have on someone. A long-distance runner in Alberta traveled halfway around the world to train with the best. His goal? To make the cut for the 2020 Olympics. But with the challenges of growing up on reserve and being diagnosed with a heart condition, the journey wasn't easy. Tamara Pimentel has the story.
From the Siksika Nation to Kenya, long-distance runner Riley Manybears took his training to a whole new level. He spent 3 months at a training facility in Eton, Kenya.
The training, it was probably the most toughest training I did in my life, but but overall it made me a stronger person, both physically and mentally.
He's back home now, working at the rec center and involved in community events, but he says looking back at his time in Kenya is an eye-opener. The 23-year-old usually trains here or in Calgary, but the conditions he faced in Kenya was a new challenge.
The first few days I didn't have power, didn't have water, but kind of brought me back to my childhood because growing up on a res, Siksika here, I didn't have that.
Manybears faced a lot of barriers growing up. Recovering from addiction, running became a stress reliever.
I didn't really have much income support. I didn't really have the best proper running clothes, running apparel and all that, and I didn't really complain, so I still kept training.
In 2015, he was diagnosed with Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome, a rapid heartbeat. Despite his diagnosis, Manybears went to Brazil to compete in an 8-kilometer race at the first World Indigenous Games and came in first. After surgery, he competed more, earning medals at the North American Indigenous Games in Regina. With the financial and motivational support of the Siksika community, Manybears trained with the top runners and coaches in Kenya.
I went there, still, confused in life, but, came back a whole different person. I feel reborn now, and I could just appreciate the things in life now.
Now, since that story aired, Manybears has since been awarded the Queen Elizabeth II's Jubilee Medal from the Alberta government, and he's now an ambassador for Siksika's SN7 program. It was created with Nike to inspire the next 7 generations with sports and dance. Now, here to tell us about SN7 is youth mentor worker Hayden Cutter. Hayden, thank you so much for joining us here today on APTN in Focus. First off, we'll start really simple and basically, can you just tell us what SN7 is and what it's about?
So yeah, SN7, we're a youth group based out of Siksika Nation, and what we do is help Indigenous youth deal with mental health crises through sports, fine arts, or any activities that they're into, and we'll find a pathway for them.
So why was it created?
There was a high need for it. There's so many of us Indigenous youth that deal with so many health concerns or mental health issues, and we don't know how to go about them on a daily basis. So Siksika Health Services, they seen that need for it, and thank goodness for them because they provided this program for us.
Well, what was that like when they did say, like, hey, we need something like this, why don't we get it going? Like, what was that like? Was it sort of like, I don't know if relief is the right word, right? But like, was it like, what was that like for them to step up and be like, we need something like this, and to actually do it?
So yeah, it was a huge relief because before this program got started, I didn't have anything for myself, right? So I was dealing with a lot of, these traumas, and growing up, like, I never had this outlet besides sports, and to have an actual program that I can go to an office and sit down and talk to people who've dealt with the same things and kind of have this common ground. It was a huge relief, a weight off my shoulders, because I just, at that moment, I seen, okay, this is helping me. This is going to help so many youth down the road,
Well, so tell us a bit about your story. Like, how did you sort of end up getting involved with all of this?
Okay, so I was a high athlete in school. I played a lot of sports like football, basketball, rugby, and Siksika Health Services wanted to take youth to run this group because that's the best way to connect with youth, because it's easier to connect and communicate with people around your same age, around the same kind of environment as you, because we're not so open to talk to like people older than us, because like coming from a Indigenous background, you feel a lot of judgment and you feel a lot of like, oh well, they're just looking down on me or something like that, right? And to have people on the same level as you is a huge relief. And the Siksika Health Services seen a couple of us youth in high school, and they said, okay, well, let's grab these guys because they're already showing these leadership qualities, and how about we put them in a group, we'll see how this program grows. And that was about 9 years ago, and we've been pretty successful.
Wow, so this has been around for almost 10 years now.
Yeah.
Wow, well, I mean, I guess that says how successful it really is, hey?
Yeah.
Well, so then when they first approached you, I mean, what was your thought process behind it, and just your thoughts on it?
For sure. At first I was kind of scared because there was nothing like this before. So I was kind of intimidated by the fact that, oh, these guys are going to tell me I have to go help these kids dealing with these traumas that I never knew how to deal with them myself, right? But what I didn't see was the trainings that came with it. Like we've taken so many trainings to help not just youth, but young adults and even adults older than us, right? And so like we touched so many people on the reserve, and most of them are youth, but a lot of adults come to us and say, okay, I need this too. How do I go about it on a daily basis? And so like my mental process was like very intimidated, but at the same time, it was empowering to know that, okay, I have this responsibility now, and I have to do this for my nation, and not just my nation, but nations across Canada.
Well, you had sort of touched on my next question in that I wanted to ask, like, what sorts of things do you guys do, like, on a daily basis, and like, what are some of the specifics of a program like SN7?
So we do a lot of program development, and we have about 10, 12 of us workers here. We're all youth, under 25, and we all have our set skill sets, and we try to, develop these programs for the kids in set skill sets. So in high school, I wasn't just an athlete, I was also a theater actor. And that was one of the first things that I touched on, because not a lot of kids are into that kind of stuff. They're kind of like, they see it as this, oh, I don't want to do that kind of stuff. I want to be an athlete. But there is a handful of kids that are into those theatrical arts or fine arts, and they're the ones harder to reach at. And I was, I don't want to say gifted, but I was like, blessed with the opportunity to be like, okay, well, I was one of you kids too, and here you go, I'm gonna put this program together, let's do something so you guys don't feel so intimidated just doing sports, right?
Well, that sounds really awesome. And I mean, just with the whole program, like from where it started and where it is now, I mean, how much has it grown, truly?
Well, we've grown so much. Like the experience that like me and my coworkers have, like it was all a learning process. And at first we were really intimidated as a group to do this, but at the same time we understand that, okay, this is in high need for a lot of reserves. And the growth from just knowing that in the back of our heads it did so much for us individually. And there was a lot of hard work, a lot of hardships, and a lot of people they got upset about how we were doing things, but once they understood our mission, and that's when everything kind of started going forward for us.
Well, and do you think, you had touched on this before, you do it for your community, but sort of for other communities too, to maybe lead the way. Do you think other communities could benefit from having a program like SN7?
Oh, for sure, because, the suicide rate on reserves is so high, especially in the youth. And SN7 was the first program of its kind. And when we realized that other reserves wanted us to go out to these schools and talk to their kids, or go out to their health services buildings and talk to kids, we've seen how much of an impact we could have, not just on Siksika, but also in other reserves across Canada. And, to this day, we still have other reserves asking for us, to go back and help their kids and see how their kids are, you know, how they're moving forward with the teachings that we left them. But at the same time, it's kind of hard to keep in contact with so many youth at the same time, because there's only a handful of us. So what we like to do is leave them with a base model of what we do and tell them, you know, here's the idea. You know, you guys know your youth better than we know them. So how about you guys develop a program around here, contact us, and we can go back and forth and help each other, you know.
So you're giving them the tools to make their own program of what you do, basically.
Yeah.
And so before SN7 came along, I just want to go back a bit. Before SN7 came along, what were youth doing in the community, you know, before this came? Like, how was that sort of changed and evolved from what they were doing before SN7 and now after?
For sure. So, I mean, there's like the common stuff, you know, after high school, the kids start to get into like these, you know, negative activities after school, and it brings down a lot of people. And that's what I mean. Like, the suicide rate is so high on reserves that we've lost so many youth and so many young adults to it, because there wasn't availability, or there wasn't a program there for them. And it's sad to see. It hurts me, because I think, oh, maybe 2 years before, maybe they would still be here, you know. That's the hard stuff about doing this job. But, you know, since we've been here, since we've been running programs, you know, a lot of youth come to our sportsplex where we run most of our programs, and they're here every day after school. You know, we have our gym open and we run programs with them. Even if they're not athletes, we'll say, hey, come on the court, come play. We'll teach you how to play. We'll do some little activities with you guys. Or, you know, there's a weight room here that we have at the sportsplex. And like, if they're not into sports or anything that we can provide with them here, we'll find the tools, or we'll put in like a budget for whatever they're interested in, and we'll provide that for them, you know.
So Hayden, what's your favorite part of being a part of this program?
My favorite part is the kids, you know, because I was one of those kids, and just seeing the smiles on their faces come in every single day, you know, seeing them rely on us, like, it gives me a sense of responsibility. And, you know, that's why I'm so committed to these kids, is because when I was at their age, I wish there was someone there for me outside of my family. I wish I had a program. I wish I had that guidance. And for myself, I'm giving that to these kids. Same with so many of my coworkers, you know, and they look at us, they don't even ask us like about programs now. It's more like, okay, I'm having problems at home. How do I deal with this? Or I'm fighting with my siblings. How can you help me with this situation, you know? So it just broadens our spectrum.
And before we let you go here, Hayden, are you able to share any future plans for SN7 and maybe the way it might change in the future, or any future goals with the whole program overall?
So we just had a Zoom meeting with another business just before this, and they wanted to do a hockey and soccer thing, which hockey is pretty common on a lot of reserves, and it's one of the better sports for Indigenous youth. But the soccer side of it was, okay, we don't do this. I don't know any Indigenous people who play soccer. Maybe there is, hopefully, but to provide something different for kids and introduce them into a new area is something that's exciting for not only just us workers, but I hope it's exciting for, you know, the parents on the reserve and the youth that will be coming out, right? And another thing is all of our programs are free, completely free. So we just accept the youth in, and because that was a big barrier for my age, it was like, oh, I have to pay to play, I have to pay for so much stuff to play, right? So like, there's a huge barrier that we're destroying so kids have this access to us.
Well, that all sounds very exciting, Hayden, and the work you guys do is just incredible, and I wish you guys nothing but the best of luck, and you know, the work you do is just so important. So thank you for coming on our show and sharing a bit of what you do, Hayden. Thanks so much. Well, that is all we have today on our show. Again, a big thank you to our fantastic guests for joining us, and thank you at home as well for joining us. Today's episode will be available as a podcast. You can listen and subscribe on aptnnews.ca/podcasts, or you can find us on your favorite player. And if you missed any of our past episodes and you want to catch up, you can find them and more on aptnnews.ca/InFocus. I'm Daryl Stranger. We'll see you back here next week.